India-Japan relations a historic inflection point. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just visited Japan yesterday. It has been a historic visit. People may not realize the tremendous impact of the timing of this visit now, but in the history books, I'm sure it will go down as a major inflection point in India-Japan relations because of the very timings of this visit. It comes at a time when both India and Japan are quite harried by Donald Trump's tariffs and hectoring. Both of them are quite miffed by the way Donald Trump has pushed them both. India has taken a very tough stand, public stand, shown its spine and inspired the rest of the world, I think including Japan. It is extremely significant that Japan recalled its top negotiator from the United States at this point, and they have pointed out that there is a historical regrettable error in the kind of tariffs 41-42% that the Americans have imposed in their statement that they have made. You see, Donald Trump, unfortunately, his timings for him have been extremely wrong. Had Donald Trump thrown his weight about, had he been around in 1990, 91 and beyond, even till 2000, it was the unipolar movement of the United States. The Soviet Union had collapsed. There was nobody to stand up to the American hegemony in terms of American economic and military superiority over the rest of the world. In fact, the fact that the dollar was the global reserve currency of the world. I mean, there was nobody to stand up to the United States or nobody to defy the diktats of the United States. It could do as it pleased. The unipolar movement passed somewhere around the turn of the century. And now it is a multipolar world order. Now, in a multipolar world order, for Donald Trump to act as if it is still a unipolar equation, I think that's where he has gone tragically wrong as far as the United States and its vital interests are concerned. He has pushed India, he has pushed Japan. He has driven them even closer together. As it is, India and Japan were very close together, but now they are even closer together. And when the Prime Minister went to Tokyo, like I said, the air tower of Tokyo was lit up in the colors of saffron, white and green. And in the hotels of Tokyo, they were playing the Gayatri Mantra. I think it is symbolic. And the significance of this visit has not been understood either globally, even in India. It is, it has been overshadowed by the SCO meet. But it is a terrific significance of this visit will be realized in the years to come. What is the basis of India-Japan ties? They are rooted in history. India, Buddhism went from India to China to Japan. The technique of Zen Buddhism has its origin in the Mahamudra doctrine of the Nalanda University, which became Chakchen when it went to Tibet and became Zazen when it reached Japan. Right? There are deep historic ties. But what is of great significance? I mean, there are so many of the Vedic gods in the Japanese pantheon. So many Vedic gods, sun god, etc. in the Japanese pantheon, Lakshmi equivalent. And the kind of technique of the Havan is there in Japan. The India-Japanese historical ties go very deep and very strong. Very strong. But we have to turn more to recent history. If India got its independence today in 1947, very few people in India are aware of the fact that the decisive contribution was Japan's support to Subhash Chandra Bose and the Indian National Army. Indians have a lot to be grateful for their freedom to the massive contribution by Japan, which unfortunately has gone unrecognized. India repaid that compliment in the trials that took place in Tokyo Tribunal, war crimes trial, when Radha Binod Pal was the only judge to dissent and support the Japanese generals. The Japanese are not a people who forget historical, good deeds. And to that extent, it had laid the basis for the India-Japan relationship. Now, things were getting along because Japan, unfortunately, was totally subsumed by the American military occupation first, and then the American terrific influence, economic subjugation more or less of Japan. Things started crystallizing in 2004 when the tsunami took place. Even more than the United States Navy, it was the Indian Navy that had gone all over to help the countries in the Indo-Pacific, especially in the Indian Ocean part of the region, right? It is then that Japan's Prime Minister, visionary Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had realized that, India and Japan, they must forge a strategic partnership, that India is a rising power of the future and Japan must invest in India's rise. 2004, he had initially spoken of this. 2007, Shinzo Abe visited India. He addressed the joint session of the parliament, the Indian parliament, and he spoke of the confluence of the two oceans. The very concept of the Indo-Pacific was conceived and first articulated by Shinzo Abe, who then went on to articulate the concept of the Quad, the quadrilateral of democracies, India, United States, Japan, Australia, right? Quad 1 that started somewhere around the early part of the 21st century. That didn't take off because China showed its anger, threw its weight around, and India and Australia backed out. But then Quad 2 came in 2020 and it really worked till Donald Trump drove India into the Russia-India-China triangle almost. He's almost succeeded in doing that. Donald Trump also went around bullying all the friends of the United States, Europe, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Canada, Mexico. I think the harshest kind of treatment he gave out was to all the friends of the United States, people with whom they had geopolitical, congruence of interests. With India, the congruence of interest was to balance the power, the maritime and military footprint of a rising China, right? I mean, all that was thrown overboard in that minefield of trades and tariffs that Donald Trump entered. And he entered it the wrong way. He presumed that the unipolar movement was still around, when historically it had passed some 2 decades back. And in doing so, he has alienated half the world. Which primarily includes the friends of the United States. He bullied them, he bullied Europe that you will invest so much. 0 tariffs. We will put 15% tariffs on you. That's a favor. We will pose 15% tariffs on Japan and you will invest $400-500 billion. And the Japanese turned around and said that will be loans. And then the United States just now, I don't know what's wrong with Donald Trump. I mean, they put in wrong figures, 41 to 45% tariff on Japan. Japan recalled its top negotiator. And this is the exact inflection point at which you must give credit to, destiny for the timings and perhaps to Modi ji for the timing, that he reached Japan at the precise moment. You know, they have conducted a survey in Japan, and they asked the people of Japan as to what should they do. You know, should they continue to bank on and enhance ties with the United States? Only 24.7% of the Japanese population agreed with this. Previously, the figures used to be 70 to 80%, because the Japanese, you know, stick to their word. If they've given a treaty ties with the Americans, I mean, they are not the people who will ditch. They have a very deeply ingrained sense of honor. But even the people of Japan are now, with the shenanigans of Donald Trump, realizing that they may have to look for other alternatives. And when they were asked, should Japan look for alternative partners other than the United States, you know what was the percentage of people who agreed? 33.7%. About 41% said that Japan should, you know, the Japanese have a strong sense of pride and honor and belief in their own capability. So about 40% said Japan should do it alone, right? But a good 33% now are veering round to the view that it should look for other partners. Look, I think it is Asia for Asians. Even when the Quad was at its peak, I had been making this point repeatedly, especially to my Japanese friends, and there are many, to my Japanese friends, that look, at the end of the day, India and Japan can't run from Asia. They belong to Asia. The Americans may stay, the Americans may change their mood, they may switch around, they may have a deal, you know, decide to get back to a bipolar world with America and China. They may befriend China, ditch everybody else. It is India and Japan which will continue to be the bedrocks of the balancing of power equation in Asia, right? India and Japan, possibly with South Korea, with Philippines, with Vietnam. I mean, this would have to be the natural, emergent balance of power equation in Asia. Its two pillars will have to be Asia. In Asia, it will have to be India and Japan. I mean, that is a given. And our ties have historically been strong. We are just, you know, reinforcing the trend of history when we unite, and it makes geopolitical sense. Great geopolitical sense, and to the credit of Shinzo Abe, he was a great visionary who was the first person to articulate the concept of the confluence, the meeting of two oceans. Now that is about to actualize, that should actualize. And if there are bureaucratic holdouts in India, you know, who resisted tooth, nail and claw India buying the Mitsubishi amphibious aircraft, I don't know for what bloody reason. But I mean, they dug in their heels and they opposed it. The bureaucracy sometimes can be a great retarding factor. But the fact is that you have no option but to strengthen the India-Japan relations, the geopolitical equation, which is a natural corollary of the balance of power, the theory of the balance of power. So what are the factors for a geopolitical, geostrategic congruence of the interests of India and Japan? The primary factor is the balance of power factor. If power has to be balanced in Asia, then India and Japan have to cooperate. We have to bandwagon and especially include South Korea, Philippines, Vietnam. There is no escaping. The number two factor is, cooperate in the Indo-Pacific Ocean. As maritime powers, as economic powers, we'll have to cooperate in this Indo-Pacific Ocean region. We'll have to cooperate to counter the Belt and Road Initiative. It's very simple. China had generated overcapacity in terms of steel, in terms of cement and this thing, and it had to invest somewhere. So from the point of view of the Chinese, it came up with a very brilliant kind of a solution, the Belt and Road Initiative. And the first one of them, it was to, through the China-Pakistan corridor, the China-Pakistan economic corridor, which passed through Indian territory. So if you have to counter these Chinese BRI initiatives, I'm afraid India and Japan have to cooperate quite a lot. Last and the latest element of cooperation is to tackle Trump's tariffs. TTT. Tackle the tariffs of Trump, which are creating a massive power for the whole world per se. India and Japan will have to cooperate for an outreach to the countries of Africa for the rare earth minerals and quite a few other aspects. Economically, both of us must try and counter the growing influence of China in America, and they're taking charge of the rare earth mines and the other strategic minerals. We will have to cooperate to sort of go for them together. We are already cooperating militarily. We've held so many joint exercises together, not just with the Japanese Navy, the Malabar series of exercises that we hold every year. We are also doing it with the Japanese Army and the Japanese Air Force. And the air aspect is where I think we need to cooperate much, much more. I don't know for what reason. What is the retarding reason? We'll have to identify with it and deal with it. We will have to, both the bureaucracies in India and Japan will have to work way around roadblocks. Why can't India and Japan develop a fifth generation fighter together? Why can't we jointly develop submarines, minesweepers, right? Air independent propulsion submarines. The Japanese have some of the most extensive experience in the world in submarine operations during World War II, aircraft carrier operations during World War II. So why can't fifth generation fighter, why can't we go in for a sixth generation fighter? The Japanese are developing this one. Why can't India be part of that developmental program? Engines, jet engines, ship engines. I mean, why can't we make, it's a natural partner, why can't we make that outreach? So, Prime Minister Modi has gone beyond the optics. What are the hard core achievements? Plenty. Japan has promised to invest 10 trillion yen, which amounts to $67 billion in India over the next 10 years. I mean, the Japanese companies are already here in good strength, whether it is Toyota, it is Suzuki, Mitsubishi. I mean, they have invested in India. Cars are being manufactured in India. I think we should encourage Japanese FDI, foreign direct investment in India. Japanese firms setting up shop in India in a big, massive way. So we are both cooperating in artificial intelligence. The Chandrayaan 5 will be launched together from Japanese soil. It will be our satellite, their rover, their launch vehicle, etc. I think that is the way to go. And in fact, I have been saying, and I will say it again, I think India as a measure, as a major gesture, should now enunciate a doctrine that Japan is a Buddhist country, and should it ever face a nuclear threat from any quarters in the world, India and Japan will enter into immediate consultation. Something like, we had gone in with the Russians, right? That, of course, that was part of the Indo-Russian Friendship Treaty, which we had signed in 1971. A similar kind of a treaty can be signed with Japan. I see no this thing. And we are also talking of cooperation in minerals, strategic minerals, rare earths, manufacture of chips, which is the gold of today. The oil of today is chips. So we have to cooperate in the manufacture of chips. We have to cooperate in the trade chains, especially rare earth minerals. India has got some finds in its own country. We can jointly cooperate in the exploitation. We could cooperate in Africa for securing rare earth excavation rights, mineral rights, etc. But like I said, India, a great gesture, civilizational gesture on the part of India would be to get into a kind of a mutual peace and cooperation agreement with Japan, wherein we give Japanese an assurance that should any country in the world threaten them with nuclear weapons, we will hold joint mutual consultations to deal with such threat. The India-Japan relations have reached a critical inflection point. We have to thank Donald Trump for being the catalyst for hastening up a lot of historical processes in Asia and the rest of the world. I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow Japan wants to join BRICS. I won't at all be surprised. And I think that is the denouement that India should work towards, and we should work towards with a very close geostrategic relationship between India and Japan. It is the need of the hour. Chinese Premier Chen Yi, after he visited India for a thaw, went to Pakistan. If China expects us to live with this relationship, well, if we can't help it, we have to live with it. Well, it should equally be prepared to live with the strengthening of the India-Japan bonds and ties. We need to increase, for God's sake, people-to-people relationship. And towards this extent, one of the best outcomes of the Modi visit is the exchange of 5 lakh people-to-people exchanges, in which skilled workers, IT workers will be going to Japan and vice versa. Jai Bharat, Jai Hind.